Want to tackle a Crossroads style Delta blues tune? It's on the advanced side, there's no doubt about that, but most players make it harder than it needs to be by just jumping in and trying to learn everything at once, but it comes together much better when you focus on the key elements one at a time. Today, we're going to learn 3 specific elements that get you playing that real Crossroads style blues in open G. Let's dig in. The 12th fret is absolute gold in open G. There's so much bluesy goodness packed into this one small spot on the neck, and the trick is really all in how you articulate the notes. So let me show you 3 ways to get those Delta bluesy sounds from this hot spot. We're going to start by looking at exactly how to slide into single notes. Real quick, more advanced techniques like some of the ones we're going to cover here build on solid slide fundamentals. If you want to master the basics first, and I think you should, grab my free slide guitar quick start at the link in the description. It covers the essential movements that make everything we're going to cover here today much easier to get down. So now let's dig into these single string slides. We're working with 3 notes here, just the top 3 strings at the 12th fret. But of course, this is all about how we're articulating the notes with the slide. We've got some options here. For instance, we can slide into the 12th fret without really thinking about where we're starting from. There's definitely a time and a place for a clear starting and ending point to your slides. But in this case, I really want to just articulate my target, my destination. So I'm sliding from somewhere around the 10th and 11th and not really paying attention much to where I'm starting. And I could start way down the neck if I want more of that slide effect. But what's cool is we can also do the reverse and focus more on the starting point, and the ending point is kind of left to the imagination. Say if we start our slide on the 11th fret of the 2nd string, that's going to be a B flat, so the minor third of G that we're playing this lick over. And if we do that, it kind of sounds like we're bending from that minor third and hinting at the major third, but I'm focusing on my starting point here, moving up, never actually getting to that B note at the 12th fret on the 2nd string. But once I approach it, I could switch over and bang into either the G on the 3rd string, or maybe even up for the D on the 1st string. And there's one other thing that really helps this sound the way it does, and that is muting. Get your fingers on top of the strings and just pick the one that you want to be heard. Notice in that little move, my thumb is over the other strings. It's resting on top of the 2nd string and laying back over the 3rd string. So you can't hear those strings. We're only hearing the one that I'm focusing on. And we can move that muting around to help us select the notes that we want to hear. Those 2 little tricks can help us make the notes sound more expressive, more vocal, and they set the tone for everything that follows. But when you want a little less finesse and a little more sledgehammer, try this out. Sliding into the 12th fret and then immediately choking out the notes is a big impact moment. It sounds great, and I absolutely love playing it. Let's take a look at how we can put this together into a little riff that we can put in a Crossroads style blues. What's happening here is I'm thinking about the 12th fret as that target of my slide. I can slide from around the 11th fret. I can slide from way down here even. What really matters is that I target that 12th fret, and that's where I stop my slide. And then the rest is really in the picking hand. I'm giving it a good attack with a brush up, with the index finger up through the top 2 strings at least, and maybe even the 3rd string. Sounds really good together. But the other part of this really makes it pack a punch, and that is once I get to that 12th fret, I stop the strings just by laying my palm of my picking hand down on the strings. And we get that sort of brick wall effect. We're sliding somewhere, but as soon as we get there, we chop down on the notes and stop them from ringing out. Once you get that, you can play with the rhythm of both when you're playing with your index finger and when you're doing the slide. You can change it up in a ton of different ways, and they all sound really good. This technique is fun to play, and it really drives the tune forward. It's punchy, it's got plenty of attack, and you're definitely going to hear this on old school Delta blues records. It pairs so nicely with this abrupt shift that we're going to take a look at next. But just like with the notes of the 12th fret, it's more than just playing the notes. The real Delta sound is in how we play the notes. So let's take a look at how we get this done. To add some contrast, what we're doing around the 12th fret, we can look to the 5th string. That works great because that's a G note, and everything we're playing here is from a G major chord, G, B, and D notes at the 12th fret. So when we play that, let's give it a little bit of Delta style by kind of getting under the string and pushing out away from the body of the guitar, and then immediately choke out on that string, kind of like we did with our brick wall slides. And when you pair those together, you get that real nice contrast. But we can take things further in our lower end here, go down to the 3rd fret on the 5th string, and just slide up. And maybe incorporate the open 4th string. These low notes create a really nice contrast from the 12th fret moves, and they add a perfect punch to the part, especially when you add that pop. Put all three together, and you've got the foundation for a real Delta slide tune. Remember, if any of this seems out of reach, just take care of the fundamentals first by grabbing the Slide Guitar Quick Start in the description. Here's an example, though, of combining these three techniques into one part. So yes, the blues is in how you play the notes. The notes do matter, and they matter big time when the progression changes to the next chord, which is what we're going to take a look at now. When your Crossroads style progression moves to the 4 chord, you need that C7 sound. That's kind of what our ears are looking for. And when playing with the slide, that can be a bit tricky, especially when we take a page out of the old Delta Blues Masters and play one of the toughest stretches out there. Yeah, that's the stretch. It gives you a real Delta sound, but like I said, it's tough. So let me show you exactly how it's built and really what makes it so challenging. This is a tough stretch, there's no doubt about it. And by the way, I don't think that this part is really any easier if you just wear your slide on, say, your ring finger. That'll just give you a different set of challenges, but challenges nonetheless. But if you're up for it, let's unpack this part because it is definitely very bluesy. We're changing into the C chord, which we can get a C major just by barring across all 6 strings at the 5th fret. We're going to focus on just the top 4 here. But we need that to sound a little more blues. So to do that, we're going to turn that into a dominant 7th chord, and that's where the stretch comes in. We're reaching up to the 8th fret and playing the B flat on the 8th fret 1st string. And we'll often work in the major 6 along the way, just to inject some melody in this. And we can also have some fun, and if you're up for it, push that top note with a little blues bend. But notice something that's happening in my technique as I'm working up on that 1st string. I go from having a relatively flat wrist, pay attention to my fret hand and my wrist in particular. Right here, I cup my wrist to an uncomfortable spot for sure. This is not home base, this is not where I normally play, but I'm giving that wrist a little cup so that I can hit those notes, and I'm coming back to that flattened wrist for more comfort. So the part, when we put it together, might sound like this. And again, if you're using a different finger to play your slide, I think the challenge then maybe isn't the stretch, but it's keeping the slide away from bumping into other strings, keeping it up off the fretboard and not sounding like a total mess. Maybe you can do it, and if so, that's great. If you play with it on your pinky, I find it easier to kind of get it out of the way, but then the trade-off is that stretch. Either way, this one's a tough one, but it sounds so bluesy. If you're struggling with that stretch, you're not alone. But here's the thing, we can get about 93.5% of that bluesy sound without the hand cramp stretch. Instead of trying to hold all those notes down under the bar, we can eliminate the stretch and use space to our advantage. Not that this workaround is easy, but what we can do is eliminate that stretch. This one, where we jump up, holding the bar at the 5th fret and spread all the way up to the 8th fret here. If we just release the bar and play single notes at a time, by moving our hand position here to play whatever note we need, we no longer have that stretch. And we can come up with a part more like this. Notice that this is doable for a lot of us, so I'll keep that bar going here. But here is where I need to jump up and release that bar. Notice the index finger released from the 5th fret and is much closer to my ring finger, which is doing the fretting here. And I jump back. And basically work in a melody with those same notes. But this time I don't have to hold that bar, and that makes the stretch disappear. Like I said, maybe that's not easy, but at least we don't have the stretch and we still capture that C7 sound. And if you can do both of them, great. Play both in a jam. Either way you choose to play it, it gets you close to that Delta blues sound. But there's definitely something else that we need to round out a Crossroads style tune, that signature riff, the one that ties everything together and gives this progression its absolute iconic sound. Sometimes when you hear a riff, you instantly think Delta blues, and to me, the Crossroads riff is exactly that kind of riff. That's the old school Delta sound we're after, so let's start breaking this down and get this riff under your fingers. Now the riff starts with the open 5th string, and then we're going to shift our focus to the top 3 strings as we play some melody, brushing up through those strings as we move along the 1st string on the fretboard. All of this is fretted, so we're not using the slide here at all. For beat 2, we're going to play a triplet rhythm, dropping down from the 5th fret to the 3rd to the open. Then come into the 3rd string with as much ringing as possible and play that 3rd string, 3rd fret note. That's the B flat, real bluesy minor 3rd, and then we brush up through the top 2 strings to kind of answer that before finishing out this measure with the G to the G7. And that's because we've got a G note here and an F note, and that gives it that 7th chord sound. So the first measure. For the second measure, we just answer that really with some strumming. 5th string to start us off again, and then from G on the 1st string, down to F, back to G, and then brush up. So together, these two sound like this. That's the core of the riff, but once you get it down, don't be afraid to change things up. Add some variations, maybe even on the fly. Here's one to get you started. One easy variation is to add an additional note into the melody as we're doing those brush ups. We move along the 1st string from the G down to the F to really give it that dominant 7 sound, but we can also back up 1 fret to play the E to give us a major 6, and it works really well if we just visit it quickly, like this. structure of the riff, the main idea is the same. We just get a new note in there to add something different. And of course, you can change things up from there and come up with your own variations. That riff just glues everything together. We've got our 12th fret Goldmine, our C7 riff, and of course, that iconic Crossroads riff. And when we put all three of the elements together, we can come up with something really cool. Here's a Crossroads inspired example. In Premium members, you can find this in the My BGI library. Just look for lesson ID TB495. Earlier, I showed you three elements that come together to build a raw Crossroads style blues. But the thing is, most players struggle to put these elements together in a jam and instead just dive headfirst into the material without a plan. Watch Tuesday Blues 478 next, where I share my approach for learning slide songs that really did change everything for me. I'll see you there. Until then, practice smart and play on.